Hello, I'm excited to bring you an immersive experience of Jean-Paul Sartre's classic work, Being and Nothingness. Today, we'll be focusing on Part 4, Chapter 1, Part 3, Freedom and Responsibility, a pivotal section that delves into the complexities of human existence and the nature of our choices. Before we begin, let's take a moment to set the scene and understand the context in which Sartre crafted this profound exploration of existentialism. The year is 1943, and the world is in the throes of World War II. Amidst this global turmoil, Sartre searches for meaning as he dissects the human condition, our freedom, responsibility, and the overwhelming weight of our decisions. In this chapter, Sartre challenges us to confront our true nature and the immense responsibility that comes with our actions. As we embark on this existential journey together, let's keep in mind the importance of embracing our freedom and the responsibilities that come with it. As you listen to my reading of this thought-provoking text, I encourage you to reflect on your own life and recognize the profound impact your choices have on yourself and the world around you. Now, without further ado, let's immerse ourselves in Jean-Paul Sartre's Being and Nothingness, exploring the depths of human freedom and responsibility, a journey through existential revelation that still resonates deeply in our modern world. Although the considerations which are about to follow are of interest primarily to the ethicist, it may nevertheless be worthwhile after these descriptions and arguments to return to the freedom of the for itself and to try to understand what the fact of this freedom represents for human destiny. The essential consequence of our earlier remarks is that man, being condemned to be free, carries the weight of the whole world on his shoulders. He is responsible for the world and for himself as a way of being. We are taking the word responsibility in its ordinary sense as consciousness of being the incontestable author of an event or of an object. In this sense, the responsibility of the for itself is overwhelming, since he is the one by whom it happens that there is a world. Since he is also the one who makes himself be, then whatever may be the situation in which he finds himself, the for itself must wholly assume this situation with its peculiar coefficient of adversity, even though it be insupportable. He must assume the situation with the proud consciousness of being the author of it, for the very worst disadvantages or the worst threats which can endanger my person have meaning only in and through my project, and it is on the ground of the engagement which I am that they appear. It is therefore senseless to think of complaining, since nothing foreign has decided what we feel, what we live, or what we are. Furthermore, this absolute responsibility is not resignation. It is simply the logical requirement of the consequences of our freedom. What happens to me happens through me, and I can neither affect myself with it, nor revolt against it, nor resign myself to it. Moreover, everything which happens to me is mine. By this, we must understand first of all that I am always equal to what happens to me qua man, for what happens to a man through other men and through himself can be only human. The most terrible situations of war, the worst tortures, do not create a non-human state of things. There is no non-human situation. It is only through fear, flight, and recourse to magical types of conduct that I shall decide on the non-human. But this decision is human, and I shall carry the entire responsibility for it. But in addition, the situation is mine, because it is the image of my free choice of myself, and everything which it presents to me is mine in that this represents me and symbolizes me. Is it not I who decide the coefficient of adversity in things and even their unpredictability by deciding myself? Thus, there are no accidents in a life. A community event which suddenly bursts forth and involves me in it does not come from the outside. If I am mobilized in a war, this war is my war. It is in my image and I deserve it. I deserve it first because I could always get out of it by suicide or by desertion. These ultimate possibilities are those which must always be present for us when there is a question of envisaging a situation. For lack of getting out of it, I have chosen it. This can be due to inertia, to cowardice in the face of public opinion, or because I prefer certain other values to the value of the refusal to join in the war, the good opinion of my relatives, the honor of my family, etc. Any way you look at it, it is a matter of a choice. This choice will be repeated later on again and again without a break until the end of the war. Therefore, we must agree with the statement by J. Romanes: in war there are no innocent victims. If therefore I have preferred war to death or to dishonor, everything takes place as if I bore the entire responsibility for this war. Of course, others have declared it, and one might be tempted perhaps to consider me as a simple accomplice. But this notion of complicity has only a juridical sense, and it does not hold here. For it depended on me that for me and by me this war should not exist, and I have decided that it does exist. There was no compulsion here, for the compulsion could have got no hold on a freedom. I did not have any excuse, for as we have said repeatedly in this book, the peculiar character of human reality is that it is without excuse. Therefore it remains for me only to lay claim to this war. But in addition, the war is mine because by the sole fact that it arises in a situation which I caused to be, and that I can discover it there only by engaging myself for or against it, I can no longer distinguish at present the choice which I make of myself from the choice which I make of the war. To live this war is to choose myself through it, and to choose it through my choice of myself. There can be no question of considering it as 4 years of vacation, or as a reprieve, as a recess, the essential part of my responsibilities being elsewhere in my married, family, or professional life. In this war which I have chosen, I choose myself from day to day, and I make it mine by making myself. If it is going to be 4 empty years, then it is I who bear the responsibility for this. Finally, as we pointed out earlier, each person is an absolute choice of self from the standpoint of a world of knowledges and of techniques which this choice both assumes and illumines. Each person is an absolute upsurge at an absolute date and is perfectly unthinkable at another date. It is therefore a waste of time to ask what I should have been if this war had not broken out, for I have chosen myself as one of the possible meanings of the epoch which imperceptibly led to war. I am not distinct from this same epoch. I could not be transported to another epoch without contradiction. Thus, I am this war which restricts and limits and makes comprehensible the period which preceded it. In this sense, we may define more precisely the responsibility of the for itself, if to the earlier quoted statement, "There are no innocent victims," we add the words, "We have the war we deserve." Thus, totally free, indistinguishable from the period for which I have chosen to be the meaning, as profoundly responsible for the war as if I had myself declared it, unable to live without integrating it in my situation, engaging myself in it wholly and stamping it with my seal, I must be without remorse or regrets as I am without excuse. For from the instant of my upsurge into being, I carry the weight of the world by myself alone, without anything or any person being able to lighten it. Yet this responsibility is of a very particular type. Someone will say, "I did not ask to be born." This is a naive way of throwing greater emphasis on our facticity. I am responsible for everything, in fact, except for my very responsibility, for I am not the foundation of my being. Therefore, everything takes place as if I were compelled to be responsible. I am abandoned in the world, not in the sense that I might remain abandoned and passive in a hostile universe like a board floating on the water, but rather in the sense that I find myself suddenly alone and without help, engaged in a world for which I bear the whole responsibility without being able, whatever I do, to tear myself away from this responsibility for an instant. For I am responsible for my very desire of fleeing responsibilities, to make myself passive in the world. To refuse to act upon things and upon others is still to choose myself, and suicide is one mode among others of being in the world. Yet I find an absolute responsibility for the fact that my facticity, here the fact of my birth, is directly inapprehensible and even inconceivable, for this fact of my birth never appears as a brute fact but always across a projective reconstruction of my for itself. I am ashamed of being born, or I am astonished at it, or I rejoice over it. Or in attempting to get rid of my life, I affirm that I live and I assume this life as bad. Thus, in a certain sense, I choose being born. This choice itself is integrally affected with facticity, since I am not able not to choose, but this facticity in turn will appear only insofar as I surpass it toward my ends. Thus, facticity is everywhere but inapprehensible. I never encounter anything except my responsibility. That is why I cannot ask, "Why was I born?" or curse the day of my birth, or declare that I did not ask to be born. For these various attitudes toward my birth, that is, toward the fact that I realize a presence in the world, are absolutely nothing else but ways of assuming this birth in full responsibility and of making it mine. Here again, I encounter only myself and my projects, so that finally my abandonment, that is, my facticity, consists simply in the fact that I am condemned to be wholly responsible for myself. I am the being which is in such a way that in its being is in question, and this is of my being is as present and inapprehensible. Under these conditions, since every event in the world can be revealed to me only as an opportunity made use of, lacked, neglected, etc., or better yet, since everything which happens to us can be considered as a chance, that is, can appear to us only as a way of realizing this being which is in question in our being, and since others as transcendences transcended are themselves only opportunities and chances, the responsibility of the for itself extends to the entire world as a peopled world. It is precisely thus that the for itself apprehends itself in anguish, that is, as a being which is neither the foundation of its own being, nor of the other's being, nor of the in-itselfs which form the world, but a being which is compelled to decide the meaning of being within it and everywhere outside of it. The one who realizes in anguish his condition as being thrown into a responsibility which extends to his very abandonment has no longer either remorse or regret or excuse. He is no longer anything but a freedom which perfectly reveals itself and whose being resides in this very revelation. But as we pointed out at the beginning of this work, most of the time we flee anguish in bad faith. As we reach the conclusion of our journey through Jean-Paul Sartre's Being and Nothingness, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the profound ideas we've explored together. Throughout this work, Sartre has challenged us to confront the nature of our existence, our freedom, and ultimately, the immense responsibility that comes with every choice we make. In grappling with these existential questions, we are encouraged to acknowledge the impact of our actions not only on ourselves, but also on the world around us. It is through this recognition of our freedom and responsibility that we can rise above the challenges and uncertainties of life. As you move forward, I hope you take these insights to heart, using them as a guiding light in your own personal quest for meaning and purpose. Embrace your freedom, carry the weight of your responsibilities with grace, and remember that every decision you make contributes to the tapestry of your life and the world beyond you. Thank you for joining me on this philosophical journey through Jean-Paul Sartre's Being and Nothingness. I hope it has inspired deep reflection and personal growth, rekindling your appreciation for the beauty and complexity of human existence. In closing, I encourage you to continue exploring the works of great philosophers and thinkers, perpetually seeking wisdom as you navigate through life's intricate tapestry.